Hey, Fatty, before we get to our guest, let's get to our guest because Pete Stetina is our guest today. And some of you folks may know Pete. He's a terrific writer and a former pro tour writer. And guess what, Fatty? Like us, he uses Floyd's of Leadville. Isn't that cool?
Welcome, Pete. So what do you use, like, say, before you race the Kokopelli, like the night before, and what did you use after?
Well, especially because you got to start early for an all day, like the Kokopelli, or for, say, Unbound Gravel. I actually have been using those soft gels so I can kind of fall asleep closer to 9 instead of 10 or 11. I feel like it just helps me get to bed a little earlier without any sleeping pill residuals in the morning for a race day. But I'm currently trying to fight DZ to make him a CBD infused shampoo because we've got the main going.
Oh, good idea.
I mean, if you're working with DZ on this, CBD shampoo or CBD chamois cream. Whoa,
that's like direct to the perineum. I mean, it wouldn't hurt on some of those long rides, I guess.
So, folks, whether you're applying it to your legs or other parts or for a good night's sleep, go to floydsofleadville.com and check out. Use the code FATTY for a cool 15% discount.
Well, there's also the code Pete Ruin Gravel. Either one. I would prefer my code.
Sure. But I mean, we're trying to make a buck here.
Yeah, me too, man.
Hey, we just want to thank Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 7 of the show that breaks down, builds you up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, hottie to most.
And I'm Fatty, and we are joined today with Pete Stetina, who is a former World Tour pro, a 4th-place racer in the 2019 Leadville Trail 100, a 2021 Leadville Trail 100 hopeful, like the rest of us, and an incredibly prolific FKT chaser.
Yeah, FKT for short is fastest known time, and Stetina recently attacked one of the most coveted endurance mountain bike courses in the world, and that is the Kokopelli Trail.
Yeah, that is 142 miles from Moab, Utah to Loma, Colorado. And Hottie, I've done this ride unsupported before. It is brutal at any speed. And the time that Pete was attempting, I got to say, is frankly unimaginable to me and probably to most of our listeners too. His story is pretty darned informative and relatable and useful to Leadville racers, I will say. And frankly, I just love big, epic stories.
So no fooling around with this episode, folks. The Kokopelli Trail is long, and this interview is a little longer than normal. If it's big rides and stories you want, Pete Stetina delivers.
Pete, it is great to talk with you again about yet another course that I am a huge fan of.
Thank you. It's a new adventure every time, so I'm really stoked to be back on a different platform, but a different adventure. But
that's a fair point. And when I say we're excited to talk with you again, of course, Hottie and I talked with you before in, I guess you would call it our sister podcast, Marginal Gains, which everyone should go listen to. But we talked about your former FKT for the White Rim, which I guess has been just barely snagged by Keegan. And maybe that should be our first question is, are you going back for a revenge ride anytime soon?
I've been asked that a lot. For those who don't know, Keegan got it by 6 seconds this spring. It is now officially a game of seconds. Props to him. I sent the belt buckle back. I'm sure I'll give it another dig someday at some point. But to be honest, that was such a focus for last year during COVID 2020. And there's so many other cool adventures out there. I mean, for me, these records are kind of meant to be broken. I'm not trying to have my stamp on it for life, like it's some Hall of Fame thing. That's not about it. And there's other big experiential rides that are kind of lighting my fire that I kind of want to experience. So if the white rim happens, it'll be the form is right. I need a good hit out for maybe an upcoming race. I'm passing through, driving west, and I realize the wind is the right conditions. But to be honest, it's not a focal point just because the motivation isn't the same.
It's a terrific video too that goes along with it that Canyon put out for you about your. In fact, it was a double attempt for you. You rested for 4 days because on the first attempt you were like 16 seconds short of the record, and came back 4 days later and then laid down a time that stood for a good amount out there. In fact, that was a great day. You're on your second attempt there for the white rim.
5:28:23. So. Almost 2 minutes. 1 minute and 58 seconds. That's it. Official.
And again, on our Silka podcast, we did a nice breakdown on your equipment that day and how you kind of attacked it and where we thought, maybe there were some seconds still to be had. So a good review there might see you go back and reclaim your FKT at the white rim. Now, the Kokopelli, Pete, would you call that a totally different animal, even though we're kind of talking about the same region here, but a totally different animal?
In fact, I actually used some of the tips that we talked about towards the Kokopelli, although marginal gains they're important and they add up over a longer amount of time, but they're also less about every little thing and more about just all-day comfort. But that said, I did implement quite a few for the Kokopelli. The Kokopelli Trail is a much more testing and all-encompassing and experiential ride. The white rim, now in hindsight, when you think about it, it feels like a sprint. It's a 5.5-hour sprint, but it's a sprint, and it's all pedaling. It's not that technical. There's a couple downhills. The Kokopelli is 140 miles, I think 18,000 feet of vert, and it's road pavement, it's sandy, it's long flat sections, but it's also chunky Moab 8-minute hike bikes, dealing with razors ripping out there, chunky ledge drops. It's like the upper body, and it's really like more of a pure mountain biking course.
And weather can be a huge and varying piece of that because you are covering, it is a point to point starting. And I wanted to ask and make sure on this, you started at the Moab end and finished at the Loma end, right?
I did. Yeah. I ran it south to north the same way that Lachlan Morton and Kurt Refschneider had done it, trying to kind of keep in that ethos of apples to apples. Although north to south is, and we can get into this later, but the conversation about which direction to run on this thing is really interesting. There's definitely give and take.
Oh boy, that would be an interesting conversation to have. I've soloed it both directions and would say that the Moab to Loma direction is the easier one, but we can have that conversation later. The important thing is, did you have favorable weather? What was the range? And then honestly, from there, I just want you to tell us the story of the day.
Weather, again, that's a big game of this whole FKT thing, is trying to cherry pick the day for the best conditions. I knew Kokopelli, I think, with my crystal ball, is going to be the hot FKT of the year. It's already becoming that. There's already been multiple attempts, whereas the white rim was kind of so 2020, but so I think, I knew I wanted to hit it out early. And also with all these races opening up this summer, do it this spring while things are still a little quieter. And I don't want to take anything away from the Kokopelli because this is a bucket list ride that anyone should do just to do it.
Yes.
Fast or funnest, it doesn't matter. However, there is a little part of that, world tour roadie, always planning in me that was like, 1 month before Unbound being a 10-hour, 11-hour race, a 10 to 11-hour effort is actually really good preparation. So that's also part of the reason I wanted to hit it in the spring. So the day of, the biggest issue was waiting for the snow to clear up high in the La Salles. I mean, you're up at 8,000 or 9,000 feet, I think. And the upper section of one of the trails is this, as soon as there's any precip, it's just clay mud that gunks your whole bike down.
I have literally had my bike completely locked out. This is back before disc brakes were a thing.
God,
but with V brakes going up just after Porcupine Rim, big chocolate bagels for wheels, and we had to stop and find rocks to just scrape off enough that our wheels would spin again. So yeah, any precip can be a day ender.
Yes. So I had heard it was clear. I had also heard from a guy that had done it a few days before, just for fun, not fast. He's like, it's still kind of bad. You got to hit it early before, like while it's still frozen up that high. Because I mean, the temps are in the low 30s still in night. And I hit it, but lo and behold, there was a random snowstorm that rolled through. So the upper part of Kokopelli was actually wet roads, about 29 degrees when I rolled through around 7:30 in the morning.
So what time did you start?
I started around 6:30. So,
okay. And what is the start point? What's the official start point?
The official start point from south to north is at the Slick Rock Trailhead on Sand Flats Road. And you climb...
Most famous trailhead in the world. I mean, it really is, yeah.
So we drove up there at 5 a.m., staked out, got ready for the day. And then as soon as daybreak started, because I wasn't planning on running lights, we hit it. It starts on a very nice, like, dirt road, but just a non-technical climb for the first 20 miles. It's like a 4,000-foot climb out the gate. And up high, there was snow on the trail. And every time I would hit a little bit of dirt, my wheels started to gum. So I was actually riding on the crown of the Jeep track in the snow. Not going that fast, but also keeping my wheels clear until I got to the paved road. And I think that was actually kind of the most clutch moment of the day, was just nursing that until I knew I could get to the pavement, which was wet and frozen. And that descent royally sucked. But
that is such a fun descent when the road is dry and clear. I have never ridden it frozen. That would be terrifying. There are a lot of hairpins in that.
Luckily, mountain bike tires are good on the road for that situation, but
I want to be able to picture exactly what you were riding, what you were carrying for this thing, because that's critical, because by the rules of the FKT, you can't take support, you can't take help, you can't have drop bags along the route. You got to start with what you're going to use for the whole day. And for 147 miles in the desert, where there is not a lot of water breaks, you are, that's critical, right? So tell us what your setup is. What are you on? What are you carrying? What are you wearing?
My setup was, I was trying to run light, and the biggest part of this whole thing is planning like you said, the nutrition, the fueling. There's no water spigots out there. No cars to meet you to get feeds.
No stores, so
I had actually reconned the trail. I had rode 80% of the entire course over the 3 days previous, just because over 10 hours, that makes a lot of time. And I could also kind of see what was flowing early spring, There's definitely some stagnant gross water, but there was also some creeks higher up. That said, like, you're hitting them when you're nice and fresh and cold and water laden already. But anyway, so I did not run a hydration pack, full open back. I didn't want the chafing. I didn't want the aerodynamic drag for 10 and a half hours. I ran nothing on my back. I have these fancy Sportful gravel jersey that has 6 pockets, and the gravel shorts that have like the little cargo leg holsters. So I had a lot of pocket space, and I actually took a top tube bag and I flipped it around and attached it to the junction of my seat post and top tube. So that carried more gear as well. Just like my white rim bike, I had the third tall bottle mounted to my top tube behind my stem. So basically the bike was laden down, but I was not. So I had capacity on the bike for 3 tall bottles. And I carried 11 hours of food with me in a mix of Cliff Bars, gels, blocks, some homemade cookies, all of it. It was Earth Day. Made sure not to litter. I had that little cargo pocket in my shorts for shoving every little bite off even the top of the gel, like really trying to be careful. I mean, I always am, but really trying. A little homage to Mother Earth there. And so, I knew I would need to take time on Kurt, who, by the way, was like on a Zoom call with me the day before, just being like, hey, I found fresh water at this place. Like, he wants to see the time beaten. This community is so supportive. They just want to see the progression, which is a beautiful. And I've since given Andrea, who's about to go for it soon, some tips on what I saw out there. But anyway, so I knew I would need to take time on him on the climbs and the pedally stuff, whereas he's a pure mountain biker. He'll take time on the chunk. I knew those first two, I think you do about 60% of your climbing in the first quarter of the ride going from the south. So I actually started at 6:30 a.m. with just 2 tall bottles with like super dense hydration mix. It's not really about sweating yet. It's climbing light. So I climbed as light as possible. I mean, you're still laden down with, 5,000, 6,000 calories or whatever. But I got to Fisher Creek after the second pass and filtered all 3 bottles there. I had a little filter bladder thing with me to get fresh water.
Interesting. I was wondering if you had planned on picking up water along the way. So yeah, you went with a small amount of water at the beginning and the intent to stop and pick up water when necessary. Of course, the direction that you're going, the last really good place to pick up water is as you cross Dewey Bridge, which is less than halfway there. So, there are pros and cons to that approach. But I'm maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself. I do want to ask, you haven't told us about your bike yet. What were you riding?
Sorry, this was my Canyon Lux dual suspension XC race bike. It's almost a little undergunned for something as chunky as the Kokopelli, but it's still such a long, fast course that the suspension is so progressive, it handles like a bigger bike. But yeah, XC race bike, aero bars again, for all the haters out there. There's no UCI here. They're very comfortable. And you got to carry them for 18,000 feet too. So, but I had the aero bar, very similar to the White Rim. Canyon Lux aero bars, 3rd bottle mount. I dropped down from a 38 to a 36 chain ring. A lot more steeper stuff, more extended climbs, slower pace. The brand new IRC prototype tires that I ran in the White Rim. So another hit on those, another FKT with those, which is really nice for IRC. That is a tire that is dropping soon. It's going to be called the GeoClaw. It's a 2.25. I think there's also a 2.4 coming. Fast rolling, aggressive, good side knob hookup for dusty stuff. I'm very impressed with this tire.
So Pete, you're a Shimano athlete, and Shimano sponsors this show. We want full disclosure there, but it's fine. Let's talk a little bit about the componentry and about gearing specifically. Are you on Di2 first of all, or do you trust Di2 out in conditions like that, and why so?
I am not, just because the actual Shimano's XTR 12 speed, their top of the line, is only mechanical at this point. You have to drop down to 11 speed for the electronic shifting still. I hope it's coming. I'm sure it probably is. They haven't told me, but no, I'm full cables. That said, it's still all routed from that big battery that Shimano stuff has. So I would not be worried about Shimano's battery life on an effort like this. I mean, on my road and gravel bike, I go like 3 or 4 weeks of pro level training, 30-hour weeks without charging. I'd say I charge it maybe every month, every 3 weeks. So I'm not so worried about that. So it was mechanical, XTR 12 speed, 36 up front. They're 1051 in the back. What else? All pro parts, the pro dropper post. You definitely want a dropper post for this thing. The pro top tube bag flipped around.
Flipped around? What do you mean by that?
So you'll see, and you guys can include the picture with your podcast. Basically, I had a water bottle where a normal top tube bag would go behind the stem. So I actually took what those top tube bags are that kind of connect to the top of your, like for most gravel riders nowadays, I flipped it around and attached it to the junction between the top tube and the seat post. So I'm kind of like almost reaching down like right between my legs to get into that thing, if you think about it.
And that freed up room for another bottle on the top tube then?
Exactly. So I had 3 28-ounce bottles on my bike, like big tall boys, because the Lux can handle 2 in the triangle up there in the front.
And the Pro Aero bars, how often what would you say the percentage of riding you spent in those Aero bars?
That was a hard one. Honestly, not as much as I would have liked. It's not as beneficial as the white rim just because there's so much chunk, even if it is kind of flat. Like it's really burly, and they're probably add 1.5 pounds to your bike, which feels like it really adds up over the all day climbing. There is basically one section, very, very long, like, and by one section I mean like 2.5 hours of between Yellow Jacket near Dewey Bridge all the way to the Colorado-Utah border. That's just like Jeep dirt road, pedal. So that was where it really was nice to just kind of sit in, change the body position, the hip angle, offload the wrists and your upper body that's pulling and holding those bars all day. Really comfortable. Definitely a weight penalty. I would say, whereas the white rim, I probably honestly used Aero bars and sat in them for 60-70% of the ride. I mean, here I sat in them maybe a quarter, maybe less.
Yeah, but if nothing else, it gives you, an alternate hand position, which is terrific to have. The great thing about a drop bar bike, of course, is those alternate hand positions are always there for you. It's a little rougher on a mountain bike. You're kind of, with flat bars, you got to kind of grab one spot or most of the time. So having an alternate hand position in a day like that has got to be great.
I love the Frankenbike aspect. There's no UCI here. It's like you just do whatever the heck you want. You want a disc wheel like Tomac in the old days, or you want a skin suit, or you want baggies, or like, a lot of people are like, oh, Aero bars. Well, first of all, they really were more comfort bars in this one. But it's like, why Aero bars? Well, why carbon fiber? Why dual suspension? Like, it's just, you just do you and have a great day out there. You're by yourself. So, I'm really not even stressing some of the social comments, but
so the pro bike stuff, and of course all of the Shimano componentry that Pete used on his bike can be found at bike.shimano.com. Go check that out. Take a look at Pete's bike too. You can look at his white rim effort and see some great shots of it and how he set it up. And of course, there'll be a Kokopelli video out as well, and you can check out all the Shimano components there, and then compare what you see there to bike.shimano.com. And we want to thank Shimano, of course, for sponsoring this show and for sponsoring Pete as well. Pete, real quick, tire pressure. What did you set your tires at for this effort?
So these IRC tires have a good X-Guard casing around them. So yeah, extra puncture resistant, 2.25. I weigh just south of 140 pounds. So I ran 17 in the front and 20 in the rear. Just because actually I punctured in the days before on 19, just because anyone who's ridden Moab just knows there's just random rocks like sticking at you at the wrong angle. So
yeah, a lot of square, chunky rocks deeply embedded in there, and there's some big descents where you're hitting them at speed. So yeah, it's
pure pinches. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But no, these handled great. No mechanical issues throughout the day. So yeah, 17 up front, 20 in the rear. Oh, and the last thing I will add is that I did have that waxed up chain, the mini bottle of squirt lube in the pocket. Moab is still so dusty, you got to do it. I probably broke out that little mini bottle at the top of hills that I had to hike a bike or something 3 times throughout the day. So quick reapplication once you start to hear it moving. Cannot underscore the importance of a mini bottle of lube in your pocket for ultimate adventures. Maybe 1 ounce tops.
All right. So I so far, I believe you've taken us to, I think you're at the top of Beaver Mesa. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so take us from there.
So yeah, I could see I had a live track Strava segment of Kurt's time. I was 16 minutes up at the top of that climb, 2.5 hours in. Stopped at Fisher Creek, filtered all 3 bottles in a fast, high mountain running water, knowing it's very safe.
How long does that take?
It looks like it took about 5 to 6 minutes for everything. You know, it's a bladder and you kind of got to squeeze it into your bike bottles.
Right.
And so, you know, I started again and it said I was 11 minutes ahead of him. And we actually stayed 11 minutes all the way to Dewey Bridge for the next 2.5 hours. All the chunky stuff. He would gain time on me on the chunky downhill stuff. I would take time back on all the climbing stuff. And it's very evenly matched. Had to deal with a party of about 30 redneck racers out there, that's a whole nother angle to juggle when you're trying to climb stuff and there's usually only one line. But
yeah, and you're breathing a lot of dust that they kick up for sure.
But so just kind of nursing it, and it's instead of, you know, you're just dosing the effort, but I definitely got it in over my head trying to keep widening that gap. It was almost my own worst enemy, seeing Kurt's time out there and going a little deep early. Got to Dewey Bridge at 4:50, so 11 minutes ahead of him and Lachlan, I saw. And that was my big water fill there. So run under the bridge. The thing with FKTs is if anyone wants, you got to enter and exit the course at the same point, you know, like little triangles. So go, you know, there's a point where it's just 100 feet over to the river, get the filter bottle out, bottle caps off, filtered all 3 tall bottles, knowing I would need to make it upwards of 6 hours on the rest of the day. And then I actually gave one last scoop and actually just had the filter bottle full and shoved it down my back. So I actually had a 4th bottle, so to speak, and carried all that the rest of the day. And
so this is your 7th, 8th, and 9th bottle that you were carrying, plus 10th, really.
Yeah.
Because this is the second time that you filtered, and you started, of course, with full bottles.
I think I didn't quite finish all 3 on the way to Dewey, so I think, I think I went through basically 9 tall bottles throughout the day, and only the first 2 were electrolyte and carbohydrate solution. The others were just, you know, I didn't want to start, you know, sometimes when you drink sugar mix, you get more thirsty, you know, I mean, you can always drop it down, but it's sweet, it's tasty on your tongue, you want more. So I went straight water. And I had kind of been battling a headwind the majority of that first part, but I knew from my cherry picking antics that there was going to be a rip and tailwind once things opened up and heading really fast towards Loma. And so I was actually really able to take a lot of time. And the pedally stuff, conserving, fueling. And that was actually kind of the worst moment for me was I wasn't actually feeling great from hour 6 to 8.5. And even though I had the tailwind and so I knew I was going fast, it just didn't feel good. I felt like I went out too hard. I had music. I had a 18-hour playlist on Spotify. I had Bluetooth speakers, only using one at a time. So it was supposed to nurse long enough. My battery failed, so I had 5 hours left, and I was like, oh, I guess it's just me and Mother Nature, which is fine, but it's a long time when you're not feeling good to just think about things.
Long time with your thoughts.
Yeah. I'm not pure enough to do 12 hours pedaling without any external input.
It's nice to have something to take you away from your thoughts. So how's the temperature at this point? Is the day heating up or is it still pretty mild?
It was a pretty mild day overall. Like, I mean, with that snowstorm rolling through, I think the high it was supposed to be high 60s, but it was actually mid 70s, which it's not bad, but you know, in that desert still, it's just like that desert just sucks moisture from your pores. So
there is no shade there. It is nothing but pure exposure. You are the highest object around for a lot of that. So yeah, you are feeling that sun if there is sun to be felt.
Yeah. But at the same time, you're dosing out your effort over 10 hours at the fastest, more, for most people, more like 15, 18 hours. The vista and the expanse you go through in this ride, like you always kind of see the La Salles and you're like, holy cow, I came from there. And it's, you're hitting alpine and pavement and chunky stuff and rock garden climb and smooth downhill and every gamut. So it's almost like you can keep the ride fresh. I don't want it to sound monotonous. Like it is the all-encompassing ride, and there's like always another chapter. It's actually very easy to mentally break down this ride.
Yeah, because the ride really does change. I mean, you're starting in Moab, and now you have crossed into Colorado, and you are riding in some desert single track, and then you are, as you're heading out to Frisco, it's this funny, in the Rabbit Valley stuff, it really spins along and flows, and it is a fun course just on its own merits. It's you have to remember to appreciate this fact when you are, however many hours into 147 miles of it, right? So,
and that was never more relevant than that final 12 miles. I mean, so I get to the final end, and you have to. It's a very bad descent and a very hike-a-bike, actually, up out of Salt Creek before you hit the Loma Kokopelli network of just like fun day trails. And I was very far ahead at that point. I think I was 36 minutes up on Kurt. I knew I had it, but it kind of became this moment where it was like, okay, like you got it, just don't mess up. But don't puncture, don't crash, but also like put your stamp on this ride a little bit. Like don't make it so easy for the next guy to nab it, and all the while, it's such a long day in the desert. Like you're starting to see spots, like when you're fit enough, you can push yourself to a point where you aren't seeing correctly and you're trying to, and so it was this moment where like the last 12 miles, it feels like it should be less than an hour or maybe an hour. And it takes like an hour 45 or something crazy. And it's excruciating after 9 to 10 hours of pedaling. It's just, you find yourself cursing every bump and you're going so slow and that this is like one of the best mountain bike trails of all time. If you just like started from the trailhead nearby and just had like a 2-hour rip with your buddies, it is such a good trail. And I was so broken at that point. And I remember like I was on this windswept mesa and I just started yelling like, F you to Mother Nature and the trail and all of that. And then I hear these voices and there's these people rafting down on the Colorado River, like 300 feet below me. Just like it got all silent for a sec. I don't think they saw me, but
sorry.
There was, yeah. But anyway, I kept it together. I hemorrhaged like, I think 6 minutes in the last hour to Kurt, but I rolled in with a time of 10 hours, 24 minutes, 43 seconds to the Kokopelli statue at the Loma Trail Network, which is currently the new FKT, which I'm very happy about. And as of this recording, Timon Fish, who is the current record holder of the AZ300, super ultra bike packer, he ran it north to south, opposite of me, and just did a 10:29. So I still got it by 5 minutes, but this brings up the whole question of, do we have two times? Which way's really faster? Which is a whole, I love the conversation.
Oh, yeah. So. I would love to be part of that conversation at some point. I have opinions, but congratulations. I mean, that's what I want to say. It's not like you took away this time from some slouch. A sub 11 Kokopelli is mind-boggling, and the fact that you brought it close to a 10-hour Kokopelli. What was that final time again?
10:24. Pedaling time was 10:08, but I had
all that filtering.
14 minutes or something or 16 of stoppage. Yeah.
So Hadi and I are hearing about this time for the first time as we are recording this. So, I mean, I'm going to have to process a little bit, but when I have done it, my fastest time is closer to 18 hours, almost twice as long.
That's a very respectable time.
Oh, yeah. I'm proud of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Pete, you posted pics of 2 pizzas and a beer after the event. I was figuring that was a celebration. I didn't know how good it was, but
that was survival.
So tell us about your pockets at the end of the day. Did you go through all those calories you stuffed in your pockets, and what did you eat?
I used everything except one gel.
Oh wow, you cut it close.
Yeah, and I used all my water. It was actually perfect. I think I had 2 homemade cookies, 3 of the big Cliff bars, a handful of the kids' Z bars that are just tasty and lighter. I think 2 packs of blocks, 5 gels or something. Again, like the drink mix, I overloaded the drink mix to have them like 350 calorie bottles each. A lot. Yeah.
And may I say, Pete, go to thefeed.com/Leadville to get all of those things and get a nice 15% discount.
I just found out about the feed, and it looks cool. I mean, they have a ton of Cliff product, and I really like how you can, instead of just ordering a box, you can just mix and match. So, for me, I just actually placed a shipment, but it was, this block of that, this other flavor of block with caffeine, and just like a little smorgasbord. Variety is the spice of life. And a few products that Cliff unfortunately doesn't make, such as oatmeal and stuff, which is nice.
Oh, they have such a huge variety, and then you can subscribe. You can to get the stuff that you want. You can try a bunch of different things, which is important this time of year as our listeners are figuring out what works on a 10 or 11 hour ride and what doesn't. What is going to give you GI issues and what is going to make you feel fantastic for an all day adventure like the Kokopelli or like Leadville. So once again, thefeed.com/Leadville and get yourself a 15% discount.
So Pete, was the day, would you call this a flawless day? Was it that good?
No, far from it. With that snow and the foul weather at the beginning, a block headwind on the Sandflats climb, that was difficult. And just that final hour, I think when you see the video, like, you're like, this guy's a pro. Like, I'm just like walking some of the easiest stuff. It's just, you have to realize, like, I'm literally seeing space dots where rocks should be at that point. So, it was a great day.
My point is this, though, Pete, for the things that were within your control, was it a flawless day?
I think so.
The weather's not out of your control. The weather's out of your hand. You can't do anything about that, right?
I was very happy with how the day went, honestly. Yeah. The only thing I would change is I actually am I think it would be faster the other direction, to be honest. And this is where the World Tour marginal gains personality comes back out and it rears its evil head. But I'm thinking, it's flatter at the beginning. You can run heavy, have all your gear, and that way, you only need 2 bottles at Dewey Bridge, I think. You've already, you think in that ride, you sweat out 5 to 10 pounds of water weight. And you have a bottle less. You've already eaten a bunch of your bars. You're going to climb light. And then in the end of that ride, you can filter at these creeks higher up where it's more prevalent. So you can filter later in the day when it's more important. And then if you're just riding down Sandflats Road, you actually don't pedal the last 20 miles. You think of it as a 120 mile effort instead of a 140 mile effort. So I feel like there's other adventures that I would love to tick first, but if I would be enticed to kind of try to break the 10 mark going the other direction.
There's a lot to talk about on the difficulty and versus the easy part for this. And oh man. So yeah, Hadi, maybe that's our next podcast season is talk about the Kokopelli. I could do it for hours and in fact have. But there's a little bit of a pivot I want to take on this now, and that is the amount of time that you spent doing the Kokopelli is around, just so 10 and a half hours is how I'm going to round it for right now. That is very close to the amount of time that most of our listener sweet spot, the people who are listening to this podcast, that they are going to do the Leadville 100 in. And I'm not saying that it's equivalent difficulty, but time spent in saddle is sort of it is for sure one of the factors in doing this race. And I'm wondering if you maybe learned some things while doing the Kokopelli that would apply to someone who is going to be in the saddle for 10 and a half hours or 9 hours or whatever at Leadville. And also, you have Leadville experience. I want to hear that story. Your 2019 Leadville is quite a story too.
Yeah. I think that similar time is actually a really good and interesting angle. That's kind of what I already alluded to with saying how it's almost a very similar effort for me for unbound gravel, which, it's going to be about a 10-hour effort, which was nice to feel that. Similar to me, I would say for myself, selfishly, I would guess more the white rim effort, a 5.5-hour effort is better prep for the Leadville, more pedally. That said, for the listeners out there, a 10-hour effort, it's great to try to get a similar effort far enough out, at least a month before. You don't have to go all the way to the same amount of time you expect, but just to feel the endurance and a little bit of that, but give yourself at least a month, maybe more, to recover from it. Just, so your body is not as shell-shocked day of. And you always know that there's that X factor race day when you will step up and you can go a couple hours further, a mile an hour faster. Just trust yourself in that. But I think the biggest thing is training your gut and to take on all those calories to survive throughout the day. I mean, Kokopelli is similar to not as high, but it's still elevation. It's still Front Range, Colorado, Utah. We're talking 5,000 to 9,000 feet range. So I'm thinking early starts, high carbohydrate drink mix. You're not going to be thirsty anytime you do take some water. Get a bunch of calories with it. Also, mountain biking is hard to eat bars and stuff with all the bouncing and the bumping. It's easier to take a swig knowing that you just put down 50 calories in one mouthful. So, I would suggest that, and kind of training your body to, eat every hour, starting, you're going to be tummy full of oatmeal or pasta if you're Italian, from the beginning, but, and you're not going to be hungry at hour one, but just do it anyway. And it's about making sure your gut can put down that much while exercising. That's almost important as training your legs for endurance events. And just dosing that effort.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that is Leadville podcast gospel, all right there. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your 2019 Leadville race, because it is looking at the time, it's a pretty amazing story. I, of course, was doing my own race then, and so I didn't know what was happening all the way up there. And Hadi was crewing for me, so he didn't have a great look at it either. So it's you had a pretty amazing day out there.
It was great. It was fun. It was part of my contractually approved alternative calendar with my team Trek Segafredo at the time, and it was so much fun. It was I ran a hardtail. I did not ride my mountain bike much in 2019 just due to my world tour obligations. And the race was very tactical from the beginning. We didn't actually try to take a ton of time. And there was Howard Grotz. We had heard the rumor that it was his farewell race. Really, he's not as competitive these days. He's got other desires in life, which is great. And he actually had a mechanical early on, and everyone just kind of was like, hey, I think Payson said it, but he was like, yo, let's not screw him over. Everyone, you cool to basically keep it under the hood until Howard gets his wheel change at that first aid station. Columbine happened. There's 20 of us. All of a sudden it became 4 of us. Howard, I can't remember I think he was Costa Rican or Colombian, very good racer, climbing superstar. And then myself and Lachlan Morton to the top of Columbine, me being a hardtail and a roadie. I got dropped on the descent. Unfortunately, Lachlan was on a dual suspension and shredded harder than me, just straightforward. He kept up. I got caught by Alex Howes and Todd Wells. And then, Todd eventually fell off the pace, but it was frustrating because actually the winning margin from Howard to myself stayed the same from the bottom of Columbine on the return all the way to the finish.
Oh, wow.
So it was just, I just couldn't quite close like that 50-second gap to those three rotating, and Alex and I were chopping off. I was able to get a gap on Housey on the power line climb. He had to run. I was able to grind it. And then, this young hitter by the name of Quinn Simmons, he caught me in the Twin Lakes area. I stopped for water in that final zone there around Twin Lakes. He caught Lachlan Morton dangling out in second place. Howard was long gone. I caught them. And it came down to a roadie sprint between three road racers on the pavement of Leadville. Me being the slowest twitch of all of them, tried to hit him 3 or 4 times on the little rollers into town, and failed miserably and rolled in for 4th place. But it was a wild race.
The gap from second to 4th is practically nothing. I mean,
it was a field sprint. After a 6-hour race, 7-hour race. I don't know. Yeah,
it is so crazy. So Howard Grotz, he had a couple minutes on U3 at 6:19, and then Quinn, Lachlan, and you all within it looks like a half minute of each other at the end. It's just extraordinary.
Actually, like a sprint to the line. Like it wasn't a gap. It was Quinn did not have corral space. So at the start, he rolled through at the very back of the group before making his way to the front of the group before the single track. So in terms of the chip timing, it looks like he beat us by 20 seconds.
Right.
That's just the way that the timing is. Yeah.
Oh, that explains the 20-second gap or whatever between him and then you and Lachlan, who are 1 second apart.
Yeah, we started on the front line together. We had proved our time in qualifying races.
Okay.
Which again, I respect the hell out of the Lifetime Leadville organizers. I totally said like, hey, I would love to try to my hand and try to win this thing. Like, I am so ashamed of it now, but I totally pulled like I just came from the Tour de France card. Like, can I please start in the front? Like, I don't want to crash. And I respect them so much for this. They were just like, yeah, we don't care. You got to prove it. Like, and so I raced the Tahoe Trail 100 in the summer of 19, had a mechanical, had to run to get my bike fixed, and still did not win the race by any means. But I got a gold corral qualifying time. I fought for it like everybody else and earned it. And that's what I love about Leadville is what we call this. They're in the gravel community, even though it's a mountain bike race. Mm-hmm. Your shit still stinks. Which is great, and I love that about this scene.
Yes.
So
100%.
Cool. Well, you have another shot this year. It sounds like it should everything go as planned. But the problem is you're doubling up on the Leadville weekend and doing lead boat, Pete, which brings up maybe some tricky preparation. I mean, obviously you'd probably like a little redemption at Leadville, but you got Steamboat Springs the day after. So I know it's still kind of way off there and you've got a lot in between now and then, but talk about what you thought about preparation for that weekend. Are you going to apply the Pro Road blueprint to the weekend, or is there something else you got cooking?
My background as a stage racer will really help in terms of the recovery and knowing how to recover between efforts. And in fact, I plan on trying to publicize some tips and tricks for anyone else trying to do their own lead boat effort. there's a few very simple tricks that you can do to recover after a hard effort and get ready for the next day. And I hope to be able to share some of what I've learned from my time in the World Tour. I will say the hardest thing about 2019 actually was I raced Leadville. I flew the day after. I started the Tour of Utah. I raced the Tour of Utah. I flew straight to Spain. I recovered for 4 days, and then I started the Vuelta. So I think in like 5 weeks of racing, I had like 5 days off. So that had me on my hands and knees, and I don't think the lead boat will be as bad as that. But, as far as recovering for anyone trying to go for the lead boat or any 2-day effort or even a big weekend, it's just right after that first day. So for in this case, the Leadville race, just that first 2 hours is so crucial. I would say, make sure you have some sort of recovery shake, a light beer or a non-alcoholic beer instead of a full IPA, just get some carbs in there. And definitely use, I'll be using the CBD topical cream from Floyd's to rub on my legs and definitely help me fall asleep the night before Steamboat. Sometimes it's hard to fall asleep after you really dig yourself a hole, as many know. You're just kind of restless in bed. And, if they're not sponsored, but if those Normatec boots are at the expo and things are COVID friendly, like hop in those for 15 minutes, give your legs a good squeeze, find a massage table, pay for it. But the thing is mostly just get a meal in you within an hour of finishing, just start taking in the carbohydrates immediately. You're going to be so drained.
Yeah, it's no joke. That's why the soigneurs are there at the end of stages for the Pro Tour riders, handing them just bottles of calories like right away, because that stuff works. I mean, and if you want to get up and ride the next day and ride hard and ride fast, you better get to work. And it sounds like what you're saying too, Pete, is really what you want to do is just baby yourself. Like you need to treat yourself like you're a baby. Like the most important thing for you to do is just rest and get ready for the next blast.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny in the World Tour, everything is so boiled down to a science. They say, take this many grams of carbs within finishing and within this time. When you finish a hard effort, your body is extremely sensitive to glycogen uptake because your body is just saying like, hey, you're going to do this to me again. We need to get ready. So don't wait too long, even if you don't have a stomach. Just like get some rice and some eggs or get a protein shake in there. But like you are going to absorb more of that instead of letting it sit in your gut within that first hour of finishing and start that building and repair process.
Like we said, your calendar looks pretty full this year, which to me is a good sign. Like it looks like we're going to have events this year. What are you hearing from organizers that you have planned to attend their events? Are they sounding confident too about pulling off events this summer?
I think things are actually looking really good. And this is my gig now, and I've made a point to keep in touch with organizers as things move, how they're feeling. If there is going to be a postponement, can you give me a heads up so I can make alternative plans? There's so many gravel events in the US now. There's a lot of conflicts. For example, if I can't get into Canada for the Trans Rockies stage race, which I really hope I can, then, there's a few races that I've already kind of back end registered on in the US to fill those weekends. There's so many cool things, and it's hard to pick and choose. But overarchingly, organizers are extremely positive, and it's still case by case basis or state by state, and it's coming down to local jurisdictions at this point. But I don't want to get too political here, but I feel like with the vaccine rollout and all the stuff that's going on, society dealing with the lockdown. I mean, the vaccine was the goal, right? And if it doesn't work, I whether or not it's ethically the right call to go do mass events, I feel like society will not just bike society, right? Just all industry, right? The world. I don't know if they'll put down with another year-long lockdown. Like if the vaccine doesn't work, I feel like society is just going to say, this is like the flu. You gotta meet it, hope the booster works. So that's arbitrary in terms of, that's just my view and where the world and culture is. I personally I have both my shots now. I did it before the Kokopelli, actually. I got lucky and there was an opening available in my town. And like a lot of people, I was hesitant just because, this mRNA stuff is despite what the scientists say, it's a new science. It hasn't been done, and it's, we really are the great human experiment. Right. But I can say after the Kokopelli, I am very proud of my effort. I didn't feel off. I don't think I was capable of more beforehand. So if I could do the Kokopelli record literally 1 week after my second shot, then I feel like for me as an athlete, that's where I was concerned. Like, what if this is kind of like suppressing systems deep down for a long time? This is changing something internally, right? And I know the science says it's not, but that's where I worry about it. So
sure.
I am very happy. I still show up with my mask on and support the cause. But yes, sorry to make it political, but
no.
This is my personal opinion. This is what I've done. And organizers are moving forward. We are a creative bunch of living beings. There are policies to try to keep things safe while going forward with the things we love and the things we do for our careers. And it looks like, as far as I can tell, it's going to be a very, very busy summer.
Yeah, I think local control, like you mentioned, Pete, is starting to. In fact, with Leadville, that's probably going to be the deal there. The governor there is allowing Colorado governors. He's allowing just local agencies to take control over how they see events happening in their communities. And so it'll be up to, for instance, Lake County to figure out is it appropriate for Leadville to happen. We hear that it's pretty much a certainty it is going to happen, but ultimately it is up to the local governments there. We also want to discuss, too, you're putting on an event, Stetina's Pay Dirt. For a lot of reasons, I love the looks and sounds of this thing. First of all, I think you've put out reasonable mileage and climbing, which I love. But you've also, you're not just putting down a timing chip and saying, here, go as fast as you can. You're doing this a little more enduro style for us.
The enduro thing actually, unfortunately, may have to change. It kind of depends on the functionality and the fact that my organizing partner, Bike Monkey, who has done Levi's Grand Fondo, the Truckee gravel race. Yeah, they're good people. They were hit so hard by the pandemic. Their job is mass participation events. So the manpower and structure needed to pull off segment timing is more collection of data and all that. We're still trying to do it. However, in terms of what is the pay dirt, I had a Grand Fondo in the Tahoe area. I live part-time in Lake Tahoe. It was me attempting to give a little bit back to the cycling community that's given me so much. Very, very long story, cut very short, is I've had a life-altering injury. My dad has a traumatic brain injury from a car-bike collision. His recovery was such that our family couldn't help him despite just the way his recovery was. He's alive and we try to have a relationship, but he is severely handicapped. And unfortunately, our inability to help with the nuances of his injury and how it's ripped our family up, I wanted to give back. So I partnered with the High Fives Foundation out of Truckee. Simply put, they support injured mountain athletes. They get you back moving. If you're paralyzed from a ski crash, they help you get a sit ski, a quad ski, and teach you to ski with it so you can ski in the mountains again and all that stuff. They bring the humanity back to our outdoor-minded family. So we support them. That's why I created this thing. With my move to gravel, I started exploring. Carson City, there's a mountain range there called the Pine Nut Mountains, and there's no Strava in it. Now they're starting to be because I've ridden it a ton, and I've had calls for help and turning around and dead ends and finding all these different ways, but I finally found an amazing way to punch through. And I'm talking packs of wild Mustangs, shotgun shells, forgotten trucks. Like, it is full Wild West. So we got an event September 11th, Stetina's Pater, launching out of Carson City, benefiting the High Fives Foundation. And there's a few tricks up my sleeve that I'm not quite ready to announce because these other inventive organizers haven't yet. But when I say the rules in gravel are more guidelines, really, I mean it. So just be ready for some real fun if anyone can make it out. And registration should be opening within the month. We will start making news at Stetina's Pater on Instagram.
Yeah, Fatty, this is right up my alley. 58 miles, 4,100 feet. That sounds reasonable to me, especially that time of the year after a hard summer of racing. Or even 47 miles, 3,700 feet, an alternative distance too. I love that idea. There's no reason to be the highest, hardest. I mean, Leadville's got that already. We gave that to them.
Yep.
But, I mean, there's a lot of organizers going out of their way to make it sound like they've got the toughest thing ever going down. And that's not what Pete is selling here. He's selling something fun, something happening, something different, and going towards the High Fives Foundation, which is a terrific organization in the Tahoe area.
Thanks.
Yeah, looks fun, looks like a great cause, and the fact that you're doing it, Pete, that this is something you're putting on, someone who, I mean, clearly you are a rider after our own hearts, and it's something that I'm going to take a serious look at.
Well, you guys let me know. We would love to try to get you out, and yeah, bring your gravel bike. The beer flows like it flows better than the water at the Kokopelli Trail. Let's just say that.
Well, Pete, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Congratulations on your Kokopelli FKT. Condolences on your White Rim FKT. But like you say, it's the getting and the handing away that makes it awesome.
Yes, 100%. Thanks for having me, guys. That was a really fun chat.
All right, Fatty, we look forward to seeing Pete in Leadville this summer. I was thinking about the Kokopelli Trail. Now, if it were up to you, if you were going for fastest known time, Fatty, would you do it Pete's direction or would you go the other way?
Pete's direction for sure for me, mostly because you're front loading all of the climbing so that you don't wind up with like 70, 80 miles in your legs before you do the first significant climb of the day and you're already tired. The way Pete did it, you are doing a ton of climbing up front, and by the time you get to Dewey Bridge in Colorado, you more or less have just a flat grind for the rest of the day with a hard dip into the sort of Fruita, Grand Junction, Troy-built network of trails that people love out there, and finish the day. I think that is the way to do it fastest if you're at least a normal person. And from Pete's point of view, I can't even say, because I can't imagine that kind of power over that period of time.
Yeah. Hottie's direction will be to bring a sleeping bag and a tent and just sleep out there for a couple nights and take it easy.
Oh, that's a terrific idea. I mean, a lot of people do that. And there's a great place to camp, right where I was saying, at Dewey Bridge in Colorado. You're right on the Colorado River. There's nice water. There's green willow trees right there, little campsites. I have camped there before, as well as in Fisher Valley. And the Kokopelli for regular people is a fantastic 2 or 3 day ride. And there are places where your truck or sag wagon can meet you and have a nice tent set up and spend a nice evening looking at beautiful stars because you are away from the light pollution of the city.
In fact, our friends at Rodeo Labs, remember we had Stephen Fitzgerald on recently, they did a video of camping on the Kokopelli. They took, I think, 2 nights, 3 days to ride the length of it. And they, of course, were on their trail donkeys, on their gravel bikes as opposed to a mountain bike. But they seem to have a great time, which gets me to a point about Rodeo Labs and riding gravel. Remember how Stephen told us that if he bottomed out his rims twice during the 2018 LT100 when he rode it on a gravel bike, he felt like he had gotten his tire pressure, that is, just right.
Yeah, and Jake Pantone would agree with him. He's, of course, one of the geniuses at Envy who has been there right from the beginning, and he says something similar. You know, your tire pressure is about right when, if once or twice in a big hard ride, you feel your rim touching the ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had one of those moments recently. I was slamming down a fire road when I hit a depression I simply didn't see, and wham! That front tire bottomed into that rim pretty hard.
Oh, when that happens, the jolt just goes right up your spine. It freaks me out, Hadi, I will say. And I'm wondering, so what'd you get from that? Did your tire burp? Your wheel knock out a true? Did you have to end the ride and call your wife to bring you home?
How about none of the above?
Really?
I was rolling on my Envy G23s. They're the gravel-specific wheel set from Envy, and they just kept rolling after that slam. You know, that hookless bead held the tire, and because that bead is round at its top edge, it's kind of blunted, the tire's sidewall suffered no damage. I mean, I eventually stopped when I had to at a light and gave the wheel a little spin just to make sure it was okay, but it was as true as the day I pulled it out of the box.
Yeah, that is the thing about Envy Engineering. They build everything as light as hell, but they also build them with those impacts in mind. In fact, you could say they expect it, and maybe from what Jake says, even want it. Look, no one's telling you to routinely bang on your carbon rims through a rock garden, unless you're riding with some of the 6 Series, in which case that's exactly what they're for. But if you occasionally feel the tire bottom out and you're on an Envy, you're going to be just fine.
And at Leadville, you got some spots where that is a distinct possibility. Mm-hmm. So put some rock-solid engineering and design between you and that baby head. Check out Envy's wheels at Envy. That's ENVE.com. So I also told you last show about my love for those DNA endurance bibs, but I didn't get to the top I was wearing.
Yeah, well, first things first, it's good to hear you were, in fact, wearing a top because, you know, that whole sunken chest, beer belly physique is not a good look. And you want to cover that up.
Who you calling fatty?
You are not fat.
To review, I had my DNA Leadville podcast kit on with matching bibs, jersey, and socks.
Yeah, and as I recall, you said the bibs, and in particular the chamois, are a real ass saver. So I don't know where you can go from there with this jersey.
Lots of places. That's why I like it. My Leadville kit jersey is a club cut, so it looks good on or off the bike. I have a race cut jersey for go fast days, but for rides that don't involve finish lines or KOMs, the club cut does great. Looser fit for a little more freedom of movement on the bike, and when I get off a bike for a coffee, the crowd at the cafe does not get the full scope of my late 50s physique.
Yeah. Cycling clothing, for all its function, does not leave a lot to the imagination. And that is why it is nice to have an option like the Club Cut jersey offered by DNA. And you can check out all of their jerseys and their bibs at dnacycling.com and let them know you heard about their stuff from the Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Podcast. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this episode. Big thanks to Pete Stetina, who is an extraordinary racer and a fun storyteller with a lot of racing wisdom to share.
Listeners, if you're enjoying the season of the Leadville podcast, let us know. Fatty's on Twitter at Fat Cyclist, and I am on Instagram at Michael Houghton. Of course, we are both on the Facebook Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants page. Share the love on whatever media you like.
And if you're feeling like a conversation, be sure to join our Slack channel. You will find a link to it over at leadville100podcast.com. I generally have a window open constantly.
If you like the show, go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating, and please write a review.
Yeah, good luck in your training. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you at the 2021 starting line.